Georgia Parole Board to deny parole for Ronald Freeman at his upcoming review and at each further review. Thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you to those who are watching on Facebook Live. District Attorney Flynn Brody and his office are here tonight and have supported me in this vigil. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for helping me to make this vigil happen and for supporting me over the years to navigate parole issues. Thank you also to Tom Sharon, who served as the district attorney in 1992 and during all of the trials that followed. His office kept my family informed of everything and fought hard for justice. It means so much that you still remember and were willing to come out tonight, even in this weather. Thank you to my friends from Raksha, who shared messages in the South Asian community seeking anyone who knew Rakesh Patel. The staff at Raksha also gave great advice about how to properly honor him tonight. And thank you to all my friends and family here tonight who hold me up and keep me going. Thank you to the Waddell family for coming here tonight and honoring Terry. Our families attended all of those trials together and share a traumatic loss and an understanding of what that is like. District Attorney Brody, is there anything that you'd like to share with us tonight?
First, I just want to say thank you for all of you for being here to help this family. As we know, when we lose our loved ones, grieving is an ever-present thing in our lives. But to have people who are willing to support you, to let you know that you are loved by this community, you are loved by our office, we will support you for the rest of our time to make sure that Mr. Freeman never gets paroled. We will support you in helping you to continue the grieving process, continue to do the things that you need to do to get on with your life. And I know we shared a story earlier of the things that have happened to your family because of this. And the trauma that a family goes through is just unbelievable that we cannot feel. We as a community will never feel the entire impact that this family has felt, whether it be stress and trauma that continues to mess with their lives and even cause early deaths in some case. So we grieve with you, and we thank you for your support. We thank you for your strength and what you are doing here to make sure that the memories do not fade away. So thank you, and let me give you.
Thank you, DA Brody. For those of you who are not familiar with the case that led us here tonight, I'll briefly summarize Ronald Freeman's crime spree between January 20th and March 31st, 1992. 30 years ago tonight, Ronald Freeman shot Rakesh, also known as Ricky Patel, during a robbery of the convenience store he owned, RK Foods, on Franklin Road in Marietta. He never regained consciousness and died the next day. Rakesh was 25 years old. He left behind a wife who he had wed just months before his death. We remember Rakesh Patel. Just 4 days later, Ronald Freeman shot and killed 25-year-old Terry Waddell in front of her 4-year-old daughter during a robbery of a Circle K on Six Flags Drive in Marietta that Terry managed. We remember Terry Waddell. Then on March 21st, 1992, Ronald Freeman shot and killed Chet, my 16-year-old brother, in other store robberies. Chet was working an after-school part-time job at a Burger King in Marietta. It was a Saturday night at around 8:30 p.m. Ronald Freeman went to the Burger King armed with a gun and the experience of already murdering 2 other people in store robberies. My brother Chet was working the drive-thru window, but his coworker Farzana asked him to cover the register while she went to the restroom. Even with 2 customers behind him and Farzana returning behind the counter, Ronald Freeman shot and killed Chet without any warning or demand for money. He ordered some food, and when Chet opened the register to give him his change, he shot Chet and grabbed the money from the open register. Chet was still holding the $2 Freeman had given him for his order. He also had a few toys, usually found in Burger King child meals, in his pocket. He was just a kid, a sophomore in high school. He didn't even know what he wanted to be yet. We remember Chet Blanchard. Next, on March 29, 1992, Freeman robbed another Burger King in Smyrna at gunpoint, where thankfully no one was injured. Then finally, on March 31st, 1992, Ronald Freeman shot 3 of his friends in an apartment in Marietta. He shot Tariq Shaheed in the back of the neck, and he also shot 2 others. He shot one woman in the face, and then he shot another woman who was 4 months pregnant with the child she and Tariq were expecting in the stomach. I'm not naming them tonight because I did not find them to ask their permission to do so. Tariq Shaheed was in a coma for a few years in a nursing home before he died. His child was born but never got to meet his father. We remember Tariq Shaheed and the others fighting for no victims of this shooting. Ronald Freeman then fled to his girlfriend's apartment in Atlanta, Roseland Apartments, was in a shootout with the Fulton County Police where he was injured. He was arrested with the same gun he used to shoot his friends, as well as to murder Chet, Terry, and Rakesh. Please light your candles at this time. I was 18 years old and a freshman in college at Emory University when Chet died. We were not quite 2 years apart in age. Chet was my best friend. When we were small, we shared a bedroom. 2 twin beds with 1970s green and yellow flower bedspreads. Even when we moved to a bigger house, we still wanted to share a room. I still have a recording he made for me when he was 11, singing Happy Birthday on my 13th birthday. Of course, there were times when we got on each other's nerves and argued like all siblings. But when I was 17 and Chet was 15, we rediscovered each other as best friends. We hung out in the same social circles, and we even double dated to my senior prom. Little did I know that I'd only have childhood memories to make a lifetime of memories. A few weeks before he died, I shared with him that I'd been sexually assaulted at college. He cried with me on the phone. The last thing he told me the day before he died was, "I love you, Amanda." On the night he was killed, he told my mom at around 7 on his way out the door to go back to work, "Later, Mom, love ya." That was the kind of 16-year-old kid that Chet was. He was kind and caring, hardworking, fun, really fun, friends with everyone. We'd only been living in Georgia for 8 months, but hundreds of kids from Wheeler High School lined the church at Chet's funeral. Some of the guys he played football with are here tonight. He played football, he wrestled, he ran track. I'm wearing his letter jacket tonight. His coaches described him as not the biggest or the fastest, but he was one of the hardest working players they had. His grades weren't the greatest, and he struggled with learning disability, but his teachers always loved him too. He had good manners. He was funny, always making jokes or funny faces or telling the most entertaining stories. He would have been a great man if he'd been allowed the chance to grow up. You can't imagine what it was like to watch on social media as all of his friends grew up and had kids of their own. Or worse, to watch Ronald Freeman grow older on the Department of Corrections website over the last 30 years. They have to take a new picture every time he's moved to a new prison or a different floor, or for whatever other reason. So over the years, I've had to watch him get older. But Chet will never grow older. He didn't get the chance to go to college, or get married, or have kids of his own, or meet my sister's kids, his niece and nephew, or hold our mom's hand with me when she died. I remember the night he was murdered with a detail that only trauma can bring. My college roommate and I were hanging out with our friends at the dorm next to ours. My roommate Claire came back from going to our room to change clothes and told me that my mom had left an urgent message. Back then it was a landline. I called her back and she asked me where I was. When I told her I was at my friend Warren's room, she asked to talk to him. And I thought she was just being overprotective because I was at a boys' room. So I told her that my roommate was there too. She asked to talk to her. My mother thought it was best to tell someone else what had happened before she told me in case I fell apart. I saw Claire's face. I knew something horrible had happened. I remember grabbing my friend Aaron's shirt and saying something bad had happened. And he said, "It's gonna be okay." It wasn't okay. When my mother told me, I fell to the floor in the hallway of the boys' freshman dorm at Emory. I remember running back to my dorm hysterical. I later got a ride home from a friend. I slept in between my parents in their room. I don't know if any of us really slept. I listened to my mom weeping. I cried until I thought I had no more tears. But there are always more. I remember calling my mother Mommy when I got home, something I hadn't called her since I was very young. For years, I used to sit on Chet's bed and spray his cologne with my eyes closed, trying to feel his presence. I contacted psychics and mediums. I sat at the cemetery reading to him and playing music. I used to wish I would die too, so that I could be with him. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital getting treatment for depression and had to drop out of school that semester. I ached so badly for so long. The years passed. I graduated from college despite going to trial every year until I graduated. They presented the evidence from Chet's case in the other trials as a similar transaction. My mother and I attended all of them. Some of what happened during court left scars on my soul. The images from the medical examiner, being sequestered and excluded from the last trial, my brother's case, just in order to give a victim impact statement during the sentencing, a law that has since been changed due to hard-fought advances in victims' rights in Georgia. The juries not having the option of life without parole, since that law wasn't passed until the year after these murders. And as a kid myself, 19 at the first trial and 21 at the fourth trial, I went on to get my master's degree in social work. And I've dedicated my life to advocating for victims. I'm blessed to have the kind of job where I can really change lives. But Chet's murder has changed who I am fundamentally. It defines me. And there's something quite sad about that. Chet would be turning 47 in May. I remember the 2009 anniversary, when he'd been dead longer than he had lived. It felt like being kicked in the stomach. In many ways, my life stopped that Saturday night when Ronald Freeman pulled that trigger. I didn't get married. I've never had children. I often worry that I've been irrevocably damaged by this traumatic loss. I pray not. My family was also damaged. My mother went to the video rental store around 9 p.m. that night, the night he died. And another customer said there was a fire at the Burger King. My mom decided to go just to check, but she said she wasn't worried. But when she got to the Burger King, it was eerily dark and surrounded by police cars. She parked next door and walked over. It was 9:15 p.m. While they stood in the parking lot of Burger King, Detective Dawson told my mother that her son was shot and killed. She just remembers falling into him. They went home with her to tell my dad. They went to the hospital to identify Chet, but luckily were spared having to see him like that. My father never really got past Chet's death and found solace in alcohol until he died in 2010 at the age of 65 from liver failure. I remember that I would see him outside looking at the sky and crying sometimes. My mother died in 2019 after a long battle with cancer. I remember the anguished look on her face when people would ask how many children she had, even in recent years, having to weigh in the moment how much she felt up to sharing. I remember how she struggled when her grandson turned 16. I remember the times I thought their marriage wouldn't survive Chet's murder. I also remember the times they would hold hands and cry together. None of us have set foot in a Burger King in 30 years. I still have to change the channel or mute the TV when a Burger King commercial comes on. My family had to move to a different part of Marietta because it was too much for my parents to drive by the grocery store, the pharmacy. All of it was near the Burger King. My sister, who was also in college at the time, had to quit her retail job after that. Nothing felt safe. Even now, I sometimes feel paralyzed by the fear that something will happen to my niece or my nephew. I've done my best to keep going and to make a difference in this world. But this trauma, this hole in my heart, just will not ever go away. It's just covered in 30 years worth of scar tissue. I still can't believe that someone can kill 4 people and be eligible for parole. If Ronald Freeman is granted parole and released, it will cause a new layer of trauma. My sense of the world making any sense will once again be destroyed. Thank you. Would anyone from Terry Waddell's family like to speak?
Yesterday was my sister's birthday. Terry would have been 55 years old. Instead of traditional celebrating, all I am left with are memories. Memories of how my sister was taken from me 30 years ago. On January the 24th, 1992, Ronald Lopez Freeman walked into the Circle K convenience store on South Cobb Drive in Marietta 20 minutes before closing. He got a soda. He placed it on the counter, he asked my sister for money, and then fatally shot her without so much as a thought. This crime that ended my sister's life that day netted Mr. Freeman $14.07. A day that Terry wasn't originally scheduled to work, but was called in as a manager to cover a sick employee quickly turned into my family's worst nightmare. 30 years ago, Mr. Freeman made the choice to murder my sister in cold blood in front of her 4-year-old daughter, who was standing right beside her. I will never forget how my innocent little niece, Christina, had to witness her own mother being gunned down. Christina recounts the events as, quote, "The man got a Hawaiian punch and put it on the counter. He told my mom to give him money, and she did, and then he did it," end quote. In her own words, Christina recounts the details, quote, "My mom twirled around in circles and fell down," end quote. Watching her own mother being shot, Christina knew my sister was hurt and needed help. Crouching by her mother until the killer left, this little girl who had just turned 4 a few months prior summoned up enough bravery to run to nearby apartments alone and start knocking on doors. It was a desperate attempt to help her mother. Little did this child understand that Terry already lay dead on the floor as she ran for help. and that she would never again see her mother alive. Terry was a bright, energetic, fun-loving person. She had so many interests in life and goals for the future. She loved her family. She had a great circle of friends. She was passionate about animals. She even owned, rode, and showed horses. But most of all, Terry was proud of being a mother. There can't be many worse things than being robbed of seeing your child grow up, or graduate high school, or even have a 5th birthday. 30 years ago, none of us knew that Terry's 25th birthday would be her last. In 5 short days, a total stranger would choose to end her life. January the 24th will be the anniversary of my sister's murder. I was 21 years old at the time of her death. I vividly remember spending my own birthday, my 22nd birthday, at my sister's funeral service at White Columns Chapel in Mableton. That was the first time I ever saw my father cry. It's always the first thing that has entered my mind for the last 30 birthdays I've had and will continue to haunt me. Today is the anniversary of the first of many murders that Ronald Freeman willingly chose to commit over a 2-month period before he was captured after opening fire on 3 of his own friends over a dispute, one who later died due to injuries sustained. Freeman robbed and shot Rakesh Patel, who was only 25 years old, in the head. The following day, Patel would die, making his new bride of only 5 months a widow. 4 days later, Freeman murdered my sister Terry, despite her doing as requested, handing over money. Showing no hesitation or remorse, Freeman would choose to gun down his second victim in front of a 4-year-old child. Then, in March of 1992, this killer walked into Burger King, ordered a burger and fries, and then shot Chet when he opened the register. Blanchard, who had taken a part-time job to earn date money, was only a 16-year-old high school sophomore. Mr. Freeman was sentenced to a total of 4 life terms plus 60 years for his 2-month crime spree of armed robberies, murders, and even shooting his own friends. Despite all this, somehow, he has managed to escape the electric chair all 3 times. One might assume that being convicted of such crimes would demand such a dangerous individual the inability to ever return to normal society. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Freeman could be eligible for parole soon. We are asking for your help to make sure that his release does not happen. It is important to keep the 1992 murder victim memories alive. We need to stand together and let it be known that the option of parole is simply not an option. I stand before you today, shouting from the rooftops if necessary, that these senseless killings must stop. The only way to make sure Mr. Freeman never hurts another person is to keep him away from the public for the remainder of his life. Living through this tragedy has done so much irreparable damage to my family. The death of my sister was the only time I truly saw my parents break down. Parents should never have to bear the burden of bearing their own children. Sadly, my dad suffered a stroke and committed suicide in 2014. My mother died in 2019 after a long battle with cancer. Terry's daughter, my niece, could not emotionally be here tonight. As I stand here, I also think about the other victims whose lives this horrible man claimed, all young, their whole lives ahead of them, deaths that will forever impact their loved ones. Ronald Lopez Freeman is a serial killer who has never shown any remorse, a murderer that does not deserve to feel sunshine outside of the penitentiary walls. Like the physical prison walls of a killer, Freeman's actions are the cause of dark walls that envelop me at times. I cannot go around, I can't dig out, and I can't jump over. As I look out, I found it quite fitting that it rained today. It was, without a doubt, tears from heaven for my sister and all the victims, as well as their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Would anyone else like to speak? Thank you again to everyone here tonight and those on Facebook for your support and for coming out to honor Chet Blanchard, Rakesh Patel, Terry Waddell, and Al Tariq Shaheed, tragically and senselessly murdered by Ronald Freeman 30 years ago. Tonight is also a call to action. Up front on the table are some community impact forms that you can fill out tonight that will be delivered to the parole board. You can also share information about victims' rights in your circles and on your social media. I added a link for more information about Georgia's Victims' Rights Bill on the Letters for Chet Facebook page. You can volunteer for or contribute funding for a program that provides services for crime victims. You can reach out to the Victim Witness Assistance Program in the Cobb County District Attorney's Office to ask how you can help them or what other programs they would recommend. As you now raise your candle in the air, take a moment of silence and think of what you will do to take action to ensure that our voices and the voices of all victims are heard. Thank you.